Welcome to Commander Central, episode 94, another special Thursday deck tech with Squishy back in the house.
Indeed.
We're going to be looking at Dylan's Kwende deck. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
This is Commander Central, guys. All three of us again for 2 shows in a row. You know, Chris was really you missed one regular show, and then it was a 2 deck techs?
I think it was 2 deck techs, yeah.
Yeah, so I shouldn't be acting like Chris has been gone for months. It was basically like a 6-day window where we recorded 3 shows. So how's everybody's weekend? Anything fun happen?
I had a wedding the other day.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
How'd that go?
It was fun. A lot of fun. My old roommate got hitched to the girlfriend he met and moved out for. So
Oh, nice.
really small, like 40 people tops up in St. Paul. So
So that was what your Saturday was.
yes.
How about you, Chris?
I played in a 2-headed giant tournament that I didn't plan on playing in.
Oh, yeah, say you didn't mention. I didn't know that was coming up. How'd
No.
that go?
Horribly.
What'd you play for a deck?
My mono red, and I played with the store owner, and he played mono white, so we were playing Boros.
Nice.
Ooh. Yeah, well, hey, style points for you.
We won 2 games out of 5 rounds. So.
And I hope the people you beat probably felt bad about that.
I don't know.
Well, we got our first War of the Spark stuff this weekend, so we've seen like 30-some cards. Is that many now?
I don't trust Reddit.
A bunch of Reddit ones, which weren't official previews, and we got, I think, like 15 or 16 that were official.
Some odd number this morning during the PAX East show.
And then a really fantastic trailer that was actually like a full animated, like 2 minutes-ish, that was really, really good.
With Dak Faden in it.
Dak Faden dying in it.
I know.
Spoiler alert. Well, because he then comes back to
You know
life.
you're supposed to say spoiler alert first,
Right, exactly.
we teed this up on Monday. This is the secret tech we knew about.
Right, yeah. Well, he comes back to life because that bits of the trailer is played in reverse. So you see him coming, but you see him not dying then, so that must mean he's fine.
I wonder how thin of a line they had to walk to make sure Marvel's like, this is pretty close to what we're doing.
Right, exactly. I think that we're definitely going to lose some Planeswalkers, so we'll see if Dak is one of them. I wonder if there's going to be, because we've seen a bunch of Planeswalkers now previewed as part of this whole thing, including ones at Uncommon. In the first person, somebody guessed that it was Ryan on Brainstorm Brewery probably 3 months ago. Said he bets we get Planeswalkers at Uncommon. He just randomly made that guess, and turns out he's correct.
It would make sense if you have 36 Planeswalkers in a set.
But I think that was even well before they'd announced that at all. He just said he thought we were going to see Planeswalkers at Uncommon, so props to him. Yeah, so we got to see some, in most of those Uncommon ones, well, first of all of them have a static ability, so they're basically kind of enchantments that you can kill. They're enchantments that have an activated ability, and then eventually you can take them out if you can hit them soon enough. So that makes them not quite as horrible in Standard, I think. And most of them were interesting for EDH. I didn't look at them all and think that goes in every deck, but almost every one I saw, I thought, well, I know where that's going. That's going in this person's deck. Or that one is going in this Nekuzar deck. Or that one's going to go in my Glissa deck in the case of Vraska.
Yep.
So if they all felt like they're definitely going to be playable somewhere.
Yep. I liked most of them don't have plus abilities. A lot of them are just minus abilities, so they kind of just kill themselves.
Well, they kind of basically feel like Saga enchantments almost. So they're attackable sagas in a lot of ways.
Very, very interesting design space usage.
Yes, for sure.
I know I did see a lot of complaining from people about Tybalt not being a common.
Yeah, yes, I did see that, yeah. Yeah, and Tybalt, uncommon Tybalt isn't much worse than Mythic Tybalt, if we're being honest. He might be better.
Honestly, he's a 3-mana, no gain life, and he's got like 5 loyalty, so it's like, bring it. You just waste an attack to get rid of him or whatever.
Yeah, and his -2 makes a 1/1, so he can. He's actually. I said he's bad. He's actually kind of decent.
If I played him, I would not minus him. I would just jam him at 3 mana and be
just
like,
let him sit there. You can't gain life. You want to take him out? Go for it. Waste your attacks.
Waste your time for him.
Yeah, and if you were playing like some kind of a red Rakdos like deck that had creature sacrifice like Lysolda or something, if you need to make a creature to skull clamp it or something, and like even the Tybalt was like, I can see a deck where that works. So I'm actually really psyched for this now. I want to see what all the cards are. It should be super interesting. So that brings up a question then I want to quick ask you guys. Planeswalkers aren't currently legal as commanders unless it says in the card that they're legal as a commander. So if people start showing up at shops or showing up with decks that, hey, I decided to build my Tybalt deck or my new, Vraska deck or whatever, do you let that fly? Like, what's your response then? Or does it depend on the person? Does it depend on the situation?
Commander damage doesn't matter in this game.
right. That's been said. I've heard that before.
I don't think I'd let it fly. There are enough planeswalkers that can be your commander. Use one of those.
If it's Tybalt, I'm going to be like, go for it, buddy.
Right, sure. And they tutor up Skull Clamp immediately. Like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, I think it might depend on the person. Like, if it's somebody I know, and I know that they're like a huge Tybalt fanboy or a Johnny fanboy, they're like, I just want to build this Ajani deck, and I'm jamming a bunch of Ajani Planeswalkers into my new Selesnya Ajani deck, I would probably let it fly. But I think if it's a stranger,
can I build Tribal Jace then?
I mean, well, number one, you already have a Jace option if you wanted to. But like, if you were sincerely like really a Jace fan, I would like, okay, you know
how the deck's going to work.
No, but you love Sarah Angel. So like, if you're like, I want to build a Sarah Planeswalker deck, and I know, number one, it's mono white. It's not going to be
but
great.
I can only play one Sarah Angel in there.
Right. Well, see if Sarah send it. You have Sarah Avatar.
Chris,
just let me play. If they're different sets, you guys can let me play them. So I can just have like 12 Sarah Angels in there.
I would let you do that. Let you play with as many Sarah Angels as you wanted in that deck if they all had different art.
You see,
but there's only like 4 arts.
That's true. Well, different editions. Then, if there's a different edition, you can put it in the deck.
All of a sudden, you see that oversized one slotted halfway in the deck.
Right.
I know what that card is.
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation. But if it's like some random person who I don't know in our store who comes in and has, particularly if it's a strong Planeswalker, I don't want to deal with it. I don't think. So that's my take anyway. I wanted to quick read this too. Charles Roberts on Twitter just messaged me earlier today. You can find him at 1991 Gaudet, Gaudet, and he wrote to say he wanted to let me know he just pulled first place in a Commander tournament at his LGS using a rough copy of my Edric deck.
Nice.
So he got some store credit, and he said he'd been wanting to win for quite a while, and he finally was able to turn the corner using that Edric deck. So thank you for writing me. First of all, that actually felt pretty good to see that this afternoon as well.
That's why in our LGS we have our own ban list that we create.
And Edric is banned.
Players, yeah, and Edric is definitely one of them that are banned.
He didn't say. I don't know if it was 1v1. I think it might have been multiplayer. I didn't. I should have asked him. I didn't. Yep. So if you want to find us on Twitter or anywhere else on the interwebs, how would you get a hold of us?
MySpace.
Yeah, MySpace. We don't have my. I had to pause.
You're like, if you want to find us on Twitter or the interwebs, I'm like,
we've gone over.
Sure, MySpace.
I think we've gone over this before. We don't have a MySpace.
It exists.
Is MySpace still a thing?
It looks like a lot of music.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like smaller bands that have MySpace pages.
Interesting.
Oh, so weird. So we can go to Facebook then, because Facebook made MySpace die. Speaking of that, I hate going off subject, but I watched this awesome video
after last week's show.
Right?
I hate going off subject.
I watched this awesome video of all the social media groups in a rap battle, and how they all are like killing each other, and how they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm better than you. I killed you." Blah blah blah. And then at the very end, they're like, "What's that noise?" And they go outside, and all of a sudden, you see this guy sit up, and it's for the Vine website. It's like revived, and they're like, "Ah!" I'll have to see if I can find that and link it sometime.
Does the Undertaker sit up out of nowhere?
So all the social media stuff, as I said, Facebook, yes. You can find us by searching CMDR Central. You can find us on Twitter. We're pretty active on Twitter. That's at CMDR Central. You can find us on YouTube, where we do a lot of our content. I know we've been talking about soon doing video. Yeah,
my pants are soon to arrive.
Soon to You can search us there, CMDR Central. And you can find us online at cmdrcentral.com. I also want to point out you guys can find us on iTunes. Give us a 5-star or a thumbs up. I don't know how iTunes works.
One of those things, 5 thumbs. Give us 5 thumbs on iTunes, I think.
5 of the symbol, whatever
5
it is.
5 wing dings.
Yep.
I was going to say, I have I love my iPhones, but I have no clue how iTunes works.
I haven't used iTunes in a while either, if I'm being honest about it. Well, we also can be found on patreon.com.
Yeah, head over to patreon.com/CMDR Central. Look at our reward tiers, and one of them is an episode like this where we'll do a deck tech on one of your decks.
Absolutely.
And depending on where you are, you might even get a playmat thrown in with it.
For sure. And we usually have contests going on, and we have one that's just wrapping up, but this is kind of a midweek show, so we will announce that on the next Monday show that airs.
Correct.
Okay.
We do have ones we can announce, though, because we did that on Monday.
Let's do that.
So this month, we're giving away War of the Spark bundles brought to you by FlipsideGaming.com. So we're giving one away on Twitter, Facebook, and Patreon. So 3 different ways to win. So check out those contest posts every Tuesday.
Yes, indeed.
I'm definitely going to like and share and comment.
Just so you can have a chance to win. That's smart, Chris. You're thinking.
Just how I roll.
I haven't calculated the winner for next week, though.
I am super curious because I never saw any comments. But Max does the decks that we play on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he put up my deck, my Mogus deck. And he's putting up the lands, and he's like, oh, any suggestions, on what other lands you could possibly run? And I comment immediately. I'm like, oh, Glacial Chasm, Maze of Vith, maybe an Urborg, Cabal Coffers. And I don't know if anyone knew it was me doing it.
I did. I scoffed at him like, you know why you're not running these lands.
All right, let's take a look at this Kwende Strikers deck. We'll put the link to the deck list out there when we post the show. And we asked a few questions of Dylan?
Correct.
Right.
It's in your notes.
Is it in my notes? All right, well. His theme is combat. It's a combat-oriented deck with heavy double strike tribal focus, with incidental knights, warriors, humans, and angels theme, and almost every single creature is one of those 4 tribes. It's a very low EDH rec rank for that captain, so it's a pretty underused and unique commander.
Yep. Budget-wise, he's looking at roughly $100 a card, or the entire suggestions we have shouldn't exceed over about $350. His meta, he has about a 3 to 6 person play group at a local card shop of roughly 50 players.
Yeah.
So 3 to 6 player pods, it looks like.
So that's a pretty huge, diverse play group.
Yeah. So the pods, they're all different types of decks, different levels, but they save the more CEDH level decks for those strict type of games versus just showing up and playing CEDH versus Mono White Kwende.
Yeah, Mono White, man, that's...
Yeah, because, Mono White's got a whole bunch of struggles.
Right.
Especially when we're talking about weenies like this. So pretty much once blockers get in, it's difficult to swing all out and get that super aggressive damage in.
Yes.
Which, me being a red player, I know how that aggressive damage works. So board wipes is another huge issue with this, with a big creature-based deck. Now, there's cards that can mitigate that, like Faith's Reward. What's the other Blink one that...
Like Eerie Interlude,
Ghostway.
Yep, that kind of stuff could mitigate that, but you always have a hard time timing that when with the mana with this.
Yeah.
Especially in a monocolored deck, you want to be jamming creatures instead of sitting back and playing the control aspect of it. As Mono White has an issue that we all know about, it's called the card draw and the ramp.
Yes, indeed.
So that's definitely something that we'll probably touch on, see what we can do about that.
This is news to me. I like drawing 1 card per turn. So when asked about improvements, he'd like to improve the deck's ability to utilize asymmetrical effects due to it being a monocolor, having mostly creatures, and really only having basic lands, so he doesn't have a lot of 2-color lands or much utility lands. He enjoyed this aspect of deck building, aka like back to basics in mono blue, Rurik Thar in an all-creature deck, Blood Moon, those type of effects. He thinks it adds a fun component of overcoming the deck's weakness. In mono, I can't read that next word, lethality? Is that right?
Yes. Without him. In Mono White, he has no issues not holding back, so he wants to make it as cutthroat as possible while remaining within the overall theme and plan of the deck.
Interesting.
I think you caught him off guard with it being a period instead of a comma.
There we
Yes.
go.
Or lethality, because he's like, lethality.
Yes, that's exactly what happened, to be quite honest.
So the goals, Chris.
So goals for this deck are to get your little knights out in the early game and get lands with land tax effects, ramp more, play Kwende, and drop your enablers. Mid-game, ramp, draw, sort of the Animist, Rogue's Gloves, all that fun stuff. And then swing with, 2, 3, 4, 5 power creatures that have first strike, which then turns into double strike from the commander.
So let's talk about the specific problems he mentions first. And the first thing we can quick do is he said he needs 5 cuts. The deck's currently at 105. So were there any cards you guys picked out right away or anything specifically you would say just full speed ahead, drop this card because there's just no need to have in the deck?
Mox Diamond.
Really? Okay. I actually didn't even really think about it because I'm like, oh, it's a good card. But I guess this isn't really a deck for it necessarily.
Because, you could ramp out fast with Mox Diamond, but it is literally the only card in there that is making it fast.
Yeah.
So 1 out of X amount of cards, the chance of you actually having it in your open hand are so slim because you don't have multiples of it. Like a Mox, not Mox Opal, but a Chrome Mox, that kind of stuff.
Mox Diamond's a great card. Don't get us wrong. We're not saying it isn't. But I think, I actually, now that you mentioned that, I kind of think you're maybe right. Mox Diamond's a great card, but you're probably also running in a deck with Chrome Mox and with Mox Opal because you have enough other artifacts and with Soul Ring and with Grim Monolith and with probably Lotus Petal and things like that, Mana Crypt, Mana Vault. So you can conceivably get 2 of those on your opening turn and many times go into turn 2 being able to play 7 mana worth of stuff.
Yep. It's also the other big reason I did this, and we'll get into this later, is the lack of actual ramp cards in the deck. Like there's 2-3 mana rocks I think in the entire deck. So I mean, compared to when you could run 5 of the colorless mana rocks and just go faster.
And pitching a land to a Mox Diamond in a mono white deck hurts you way more than it does in other decks as well.
Yep.
Well, I actually didn't even think of it because I'm just like, oh, Mox Diamond, it's obviously a good card, but yeah, maybe it doesn't make sense in this particular deck. I kind of buy that. How about you, Max? Any ones that you think?
Eldrazi Conscription?
I mean, it's kind of a win condition. I get it to a degree. Like, you're mono white, so it's late game and someone drops their Kefnet or their whatever, and you're like, I'm just going to take that and swing back at you for 20 damage or something because it's going to get huge. And, well, I mean, you'd have to give it first strike somehow, I guess. But
well, no. Does it? Eldrazi Conscription doesn't take control of something. You put it on your own stuff.
That's true. No, I was thinking of the blue one. Yeah.
Annihilator too.
Yeah, duh. But still, it can be a semi-win condition, particularly because you're probably put out one of your double strikers then,
right,
and swing at somebody.
I just see it being too easy to 2-for-1 you if you play this. You have to wait till late game to get it out, and then a simple removal spell will make it not worth it.
Yep, and you can't recur it because there's no recursion creatures in here for your enchantment or anything like that.
The cuts I had were a little bit smaller were kind of cards I felt were not things you would miss, like Student of Warfare. It requires sorcery speed, mana investment to even give it first strike. If it's in your opening hand and you play it in turn 1 and you can dump mana into it on turn 3 when you have nothing going on maybe or something, that's fine. But I think you don't want to see it in your hand past that. And I think if you don't want a card in your hand past turn 3, you probably don't want it, generally speaking, particularly in this deck. I think Knight of Grace kind of feels the same way. I think Lone Rider kind of feels the same way. I think Porcelain Legionnaire, as far as creatures go, kind of feel the same way. And I think even if you cut those 4 creatures, you're still at 34. That's still a really creature-heavy deck. And I think 37 lands for a mono-white deck with a pretty low curve. Curve is just over 3. It's like 3.14 or something. You could get away with 36 lands really, really easily, I think.
Yeah. I know. I was looking at the 37 lands, too, and I actually thought about cutting out X amount of planes and running more of the cycling lands.
Yeah, I would suggest, actually, my suggestion was the opposite. I'd pull Desert of the True, which is a cycling land, and not pull your planes, because I'm going to suggest later on something with planes. And you've seen my mono white decks, you know what that is, Chris, probably?
Yep, I know what it is.
But I think definitely you can go away with 36 lands. I'm running 35 in Zero, and I really don't ever have a problem. I think you don't want to run 33 or something, but I think you can get away with 36 definitely.
Yep. The cool thing about this being a monocolor deck, though, too, is you can even cut down more on the basic lands. You can play a whole bunch of utility lands because it does not affect you.
Yes. And you don't need to worry about fixing. Like, there's one of the things people sometimes tend to forget in a 2-color deck or a 3-color deck. You want to run a couple more lands sometimes because you need to have one that produces one of each of those colors to get the things out you want to get out. You don't care here. As long as you have 3 lands, you don't care what they are. You don't need to have like a specific mix to try to get those in the hand frequently. You just got to get lands out. As long as you have 1 or 2 of them that make white mana, you're good to go.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think one land could go away as well. He then says, once people have blockers, it can be difficult to swing out and get damage through, and he has trouble finding holes in defenses. Any solutions for anybody you've got there?
Akroma's Memorial?
7 mana, but flying and protection and first strike.
And trample and haste.
It's 7 mana. Well, so I'll say this. There's a perfect swap, even if you don't pull Eldrazi Conscription. If I'm going to spend that much colorless mana, I would dare say Chroma's Memorial wins you a lot more games than Eldrazi Conscription does in this deck.
Agreed.
Yeah, it hits your whole team. That's really what I was looking for, was something that's going to buff his 3 or 4 creatures versus a single creature.
Yeah. And not just buff them. I mean, it's going to buff them because it's going to give them all the double strike if they don't have it. Because I think I counted, and I don't know where it's at, there's 16 creatures in here that don't have first strike or double strike.
Yes.
Again, he's going to probably drop a few creatures to get down to 100 cards, but that's still a good amount that are going to then get double strike from Chroma's Memorial in addition to flying. And if they have flyers out, pro-red and pro-black still gets you past a bunch of those flyers. That's a good call. I like that one. Concerted Effort is one I had down. It's an enchantment for 2 and white. And it says, at the beginning of each upkeep, Creatures you control gain flying until end of turn if a creature you control has flying. The same is true for fear, first strike, double strike, land walk, protection, trample, and vigilance.
Yep, it's pretty much Odric on an enchantment.
Yes.
With older keywords.
Yep.
So the double strike and first strike part really isn't that relevant. The double strike part isn't relevant really because you have that from your commander, except for you have creatures that don't have first strike, so it's going to give them first strike and double strike so that those two kind of become redundant, but it's still good. It's still going to buff enough creatures up. It's going to give them flying because there's 8 flyers in this deck? I looked it up.
Yes.
There's 8 flyers, so odds are you have one of them in play. So it gives the rest of your guys flying. And some of that evasion, some of that protection is kind of evasion. There's a Chroma in here, which has Pro Black and Red. There's Bane's Flare, which has protection from demons and dragons. There's Elite Inquisitor, which
are black and red.
Yeah, most of the time, yeah, true. Inquisitor has protection from werewolves, vampires, and zombies, which are usually, well, there's some green in werewolves sometimes too.
True.
But that's a lot of red and black there as well. Silver Knight has pro red and White Knight has pro black. But there's a lot of times sharing that protection is going to get you through for damage too. So I actually like your Chroma's Memorial suggestion a lot, but I think you could do pretty good having concerted effort out as well. That's going to let you strike through plenty of times, as well as buffing your guys by giving everybody that double strike damage.
Yep. I actually have that on my list as well.
Nice.
Because it's a really, really good card, especially when you're playing the weenies, because you need those keywords to make them work.
I got a couple more here that I don't know if I would run, but I'm just going to mention them for him to think about down the road. Brave the Elements is a single white and instant speed, and white creatures you control gain protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. That's pretty often going to let you get through in one person. Sometimes someone's got a deck where they got a perfect mix of 3 red creatures, 3 green creatures or something, and it's not going to work, but very often, they're going to have a white-blue creature and a white creature and a white green creature, and you're gonna get through really, really often if you choose that kind of carefully.
Yep. Well, even if they do have the perfect mix of the green and red, like you were saying, you choose the color that the creatures are the strongest in.
Right.
And then it's you want to block with your weak creatures and lose them.
It's still really useful then.
Yep.
And you can at 1 mana, it's easy to leave the mana free, and then it's easy to also someone casts Blasphemous Act. I'm just going to name red quickly and save my creatures, or someone goes to target one of my creatures with a Swords to Plowshares. Well, I'm just going to give all my creatures pro white. 1 mana to stop a Swords and Plowshares from killing your commander mid-swing when removing him, but remove double strike from your entire line.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's probably worth 1 white mana to have that on board to save your commander.
And when I went through this whole list and everything, I came to the conclusion that I understand why they tried to make banding work.
Yeah, because it lets white get a lot of extra stuff through.
It lets them attack as a team, so it's more damage going in, and so you have to block as a team. And I definitely understand why it worked that way.
I think Glaring Spotlight is a pretty decent card. It's an artifact, costs 1 to cast, and creatures your opponents control with hexproof can be targeted as if they did not have it. There's not a lot of targeted removal in this deck, so that portion isn't probably going to be that relevant. But you can sacrifice it for 3 mana, and creatures you control can't be blocked this turn.
And get hexproof?
Do they? You know what? I didn't. I just copied down that they can't be blocked, so I probably should have. We should verify that really quickly here.
Sacrifice Glaring Spotlight. Creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn and are unblockable.
So it can also protect your stuff in a pinch as well. Yep. And the last one I put on here, I kind of did as a little bit of a joke, but maybe if you play with the same play group, which I don't think he does, Iacin Highway is a card from Homelands. It's an enchantment that costs 3 and 3 white, and it says white creatures have Planeswalk. So if you play against, if you know you're playing against white decks really frequently, you don't want to have it out because it gives everyone else Planeswalk against you. But if you happen to play against white decks a lot and you're like, oh, I'm just going to drop this right now against my friend who's playing white, and I can just alpha strike myself unblockable. I think you're better off with Glaring Spotlight if you just want to do that one time swing through. But there is a card out there that gives all your creatures Planeswalk, so I wanted to mention it.
That's a lot of mana for something that isn't true conviction.
6 mana to give your guys Planeswalk, to give all white creatures, so then it also can bite you.
Yep. Enchant World.
Yeah, it's an Enchant World.
Because if anyone plays any white creature, you're running just mono whites, you're going to have at least 1 Planes
out.
Oh
yeah, it's definitely not.
Ideally, you probably have 3.
I say that if you have a small meta and you're playing against a bunch of white decks, even then I wouldn't run it. So I just wanted to mention it.
I might consider it in this deck just because of how fast it is, but that would be the only way.
It would be super trolly too. Like somebody would really feel bad if you dropped that and then killed them, and they're like, "What just happened?"
All because I have a hallowed fountain now at our sacred fountain grave.
Yeah, that would be a super troll pick. So I wanted to mention that. He says board wipes are always an issue, but cards that mitigate that, like Faith's Reward, he's had trouble timing it to keep mana up to make them usable.
Yeah.
So I've got a suggestion here based on my mono white deck, and this is why I mentioned the Plains thing before. Mana doublers in my mono white deck are when I know the game is winnable for me. If I drop a mana doubler, and he has Cage Sun already, but if I drop a Cage Sun or Gauntlet of Power or Extraplanar Lens, and it sticks and no one has a response, then I feel like, okay, there's a really good chance now I can win this game or put it in a position at least where I'm going to be competitive the rest of the way. And part of the reason is I can then do all the things I want to do very frequently, including leave up mana for protection spells. So I would really strongly consider that, and that's why I said cut out the desert and leave in your basic lands, because basic lands are what get affected by those for the most part. Extraplanar Lens, you probably maybe want to consider switching to Snowlands.
Yeah.
And there's a few things later on I will mention that care about that as well. It lets other people not piggyback off your lens for the most part, unless they're running Snowlands. But you can also then run Scrying Sheets, which gives you a way to maybe get a few cards as well. And yeah, I think there's Sunstone, which you can then sacrifice a snow-covered land to fog, essentially. It's not necessarily great, but it also gives you a defensive strategy to keep people from cracking back at you. I would just highly suggest looking at running all three of those mana doublers. They make a ridiculous difference for me in mono white, and I would think they would do the same thing here. It makes it so much easier to leave up that Ghost Wear, the Eerie Interlude, or the Teferi's Protection, which he already has, or to cast Faith's Reward, things like that. That would be the first thing I would suggest for making it easier to survive board wipes or build back up after a board wipe. How about you guys? What do you got?
I guess for board wipes, for me, you just have to live with them in mono white.
I mean, it is going to happen.
Yeah, there's no way really around it. I was actually looking at a card here as Dana was talking because I thought that it might work, Return to Ranks, but you don't have enough creatures with CMC.
With the low enough CMC.
Yeah, of 2 or less to do it. I thought it was power 2 or less, so I was quickly looking it up. But other than that, I really don't know how you can get around it.
I mean, Unbreakable Formation, I think, is a really solid card as well. And there's not a lot of tokens here, but Rootborn Defenses, again, 3 mana to give yourself indestructible. I don't think you need all of those. And I think there's, like I said, there's already Teferi's Protection in here, but I think an Eerie Interlude or a Ghostway to keep your guys safe. And I think it's so much easier to save mana for those if you have the mana doublers up.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff like Make a Stand, too, that gives your stuff +1/+0 and indestructible at instant speed. My opinion is just be the one with the most board wipes. I mean, if people want to run them against you, run more and just kind of turn this deck into a slower game than aggro.
I'd say also if you're struggling with mana, again, I mentioned the doublers, to keep up mana for those things, there isn't a Nykthos in this deck right now. Nykthos is just accidentally going to tap for 3 mana sometimes for a 2 activation. Like, worst case scenario, a bunch of times you're going to play Nykthos and be like, well, I can spend 2 and get 3 out of it, so I'm neutral, or tap it for a colorless. But really, really often, you're just going to accidentally tap it for 6, and you're going to, plenty of times, you're going to tap it for 10 or 12 or 16. Like, you don't need many of those white permanents with double or triple white in the casting cost out to have Nykthos be better than a Guy's Cradle sometimes.
Yeah.
And, Ancient Tomb, since we're talking about lands, yes, it's $22 or something.
What?
Yeah, it's already back up.
It's already creeping back up. But
I'm so glad I hunted mine down.
But it was 50 3 months ago or 4 months ago, and it's going to be 30 probably when we have this conversation again in June or something. That makes a difference in decks. Like, there's been a lot of times, and this deck has quite a bit of instant life gain, so you can compensate for it, but there's been a lot of times having an Ancient Tomb out has been the difference between me being able to play Teferi's Protection because I have 2 lands untapped, and one is a Plains and one is that Ancient Tomb, and not being able to do that. So that's one I would look, if you've got a little bit of money to spend, I would invest that in this deck, because that's also going to make it easier to protect your board by not having to spend all your mana on your main turn. Next thing is consistency. It says, despite all the ramp and a card draw, mono white is still mono white, which is true. Any suggestions for how to work around that?
I have a few.
Lay them on me.
So this deck, like Dana said, has 38 creatures in it currently. 39 if you count the commander.
Yep.
And they're a mix of knights, soldiers, humans, angels, a couple random ones. I would like to trim the creature package down to focus on humans and maybe angels because the angels have the flying.
Sure.
And then work with your tribal synergies. So run stuff like Vanquisher's Banner. So when you cast a human, you draw a card.
Yeah.
The Immortal Sun, you're not running any Planeswalkers, so it's not going to burn you. It's going to pump your team.
Oh, sure.
Shut down
and draw you a card.
Draw you cards. Shuts down your opponent's Planeswalkers. Staff and Nin, it's just an alternative to the Immortal Sun. They're both 6 mana. One's really expensive because it's in Standard right now.
Staff and Nin is cheap.
One is Staff and Nin is super cheap.
And yeah, it's 6 mana, but like, there's enough times when you can plink a Planeswalker or plink somebody's 1/1 creature to get a blocker out of the way, or dealing 3 damage over 3 turns to a person isn't nothing. That can make a difference. Absolutely can make a difference.
Yep.
I'd rather, for 6 mana, play Staff and In over Cage Sun, honestly, because in this deck you have such a little amount of card draw that 2 cards a turn makes up for not having double mana.
I mean, I run both in my Zero deck. I think you have room for both in this deck, but I would look at Cage Sun for sure.
Along with the more consistent tribal strategy, you have stuff like Herald's Horn and Path of Ancestry. It's that land from the tribal commander set where it's essentially command tower, but it lets you scry.
Which
so card selection.
It's selection, it's not advantage, but if it gets a land out of your way,
right,
that can be a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
The one I have down here, my first entry in this list is Scroll Rack. He already has land tax in the deck, which he should. Land tax is great. And Scroll Rack is a great card too. Like it on its own, Scroll Rack is really, really useful. But if you have land tax out and you have Scroll Rack out, you essentially get a couple 3 free card draws per turn. Because you use that land tax to get those 3 planes. And okay, so maybe you get 2 free draws because you use that 1 plane for your land drop for the turn. But worst case, you then shuffle those away with land tax and get two new cards. Then next turn, use the land tax again, get those 2 lands again because they're shuffled into your library. I mean, Scroll Rack is really, really good, and this is absolutely the kind of deck where you want to run it.
Yeah.
And then if you happen to go with the mana doubler route and run Snow Plains as well, it's an easy way to set up that scrying sheets to put one of those in hand if you put those Snowlands back on top with Scroll Rack. So there's some synergy there as well. We mentioned this when he was spoiled, that Karn, Urza Sahan, is the best mono white draw spell printed in a long time. I'd be really tempted to run it in this deck just for the draw.
Yeah.
Even if you do decide to run Immortal Sun, running 1 or 2 Planeswalkers
yes,
is
you're
not
probably
going to
be fine.
Yeah.
In my Tajik deck, in my Boros deck, I run 4 Planeswalkers and the Immortal Sun. And in a live game, in an actual pod, I've never had more than 1 creature out with Immortal Sun, 1 Planeswalker out with Immortal Sun in my hand.
And you just, and at that point, there's plenty of times you're like, well, I'll just deal with it. I don't care.
Yeah, people are going to end up killing your Immortal Sun, at some point,
Probably,
because
yes.
it's just going to be netting you so much advantage.
I mean, I think Mind's Eye is still a playable card in mono white.
Didn't you just say this card was left in the dust like 3 weeks ago?
I did, but and I think it has outside of. I think I said outside of mono white or Boros.
You did,
but actually this week because we talked about my Zero game that Chris watched me play, I got to draw with a Mind's Eye because I had so much mana from my mana doubler sitting there when the guy that was next to me did a Sphinx's Rev at the end of turn for I'm drawing 9 off Sphinx's Rev. I had 9 mana to pump into Mind's Eye to draw 9 cards.
That's awesome.
And I could do that because I had the mana doublers free. So that makes, Mind's Eye, I think, again, having mana doublers, having that Ancient Tomb, having Nykthos, makes it way easier to keep up 2 or 3 mana for Mind's Eye too.
Yep.
So, again, I don't know if you want to run it if you're not running those, but I think those make it way easier to run Mind's Eye. He's got a piece of equipment in here called Rogue's Gloves, which I kind of like in theory. In theory, it's 2 to cast, 2 to equip, and when a creature deals damage to a player, you draw a card. So I get it, because if you have double strike going, you're drawing 2 cards. You have to get through, though, is the first thing. You have to sneak through with equipment. And there's 8 flyers on here, so I think there's probably enough times you can throw it on a Baneslayer and draw a card. However, the first thing I'll say is Mask of Memory costs 2 to cast and only 1 to equip. And when a creature deals damage, you draw 2 cards and discard 1. So number 1, it's cheaper to equip every time you have to equip it, but you're still getting 1 card. You're just drawing 2 and pitching one of those. And it's not pitch one of those 2. It's pitch 1 card from your hand, 1 card period.
Yep. It's just like any card draw like that where you just draw and then discard.
So even if your hand is empty, if your hand's totally empty, with the Rogue's Gloves, you just draw 1. With Mask, you draw 2 and pitch the worst of the 2. So if your hand's totally empty, it's still better and it's cheaper to equip. But if you happen to have cards you don't want in your hand, it's way, way better because you're pitching the ones you don't want and keeping both the 2 you drew. And same thing, it's double strike, so you're drawing 4 off your double strike damage and pitching 2. So again, probably pitch 2 lands and keep 4 new cards. I think if you're going to go that route, and I don't know if that's the optimal draw route, but I think maybe that works good in this deck, I would just replace that with Mask of Memory full stop.
Yeah. He's running a lot of equipment, 7 pieces of equipment in this deck, and nothing really to go find them.
Yeah.
There's no Stoneforge or even stuff that helps get them out quicker, like a Sigarda's Aid or even a SRAM would be great in this deck.
I think at that point then you're maybe getting the deck's going to be getting it too unfocused.
Right.
But yes, there's a lot of equipment in here, and I get a lot of it is stuff that procs off double strike, like Teferi's Protection, Umezawa's Jit. I get it because you get double Jit triggers too. So and it's a good card in general.
Yeah.
I think I would rather just run some of the swords. Honestly, it gives you evasion. They have amazing abilities. Yeah. The big one that I thought about since we were talking about equipment is Sword of Vengeance, just for the simple fact that it gives you +3/+0, trample and haste. I think it gives.
And yeah, trample, haste, and something else.
Yep. So right there, if your guy has double strike, you're going to nuke the guy out on the first hit.
Sure.
Second hit, guess what? Trample over because there's nothing there now.
And first strike.
Yeah.
That's the third keyword on Sword of Vengeance.
Yeah, so trample is your other evasion that you need with these weenies is because you need to be able to go through and get through the stuff.
Yeah.
Because they may just, chump block with tokens, like if you're playing a Gave deck. If you have trample, you're just like, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The last one I have here is Palace Jailer. It's 2 white for a human soldier. When it enters battlefield, you become the monarch, and you exile target creature an opponent controls until an opponent becomes the monarch. So you draw a card, basically the turn it comes into play for the most part, and assuming you have a decent board state, which you probably will if you're casting this in the first place, you could keep it for 2 or 3 turns, or more technically, drawing a bonus card at the end of each turn.
Mm-hmm.
The other upside to this card, and I've noticed this a lot in multiplayer games, is humans by nature are greedy beings.
Sure.
So once the monarch leaves you, people start ignoring you because they're all fighting for the monarch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they'll be attacking everyone else, trying to get the monarch back and forth, which allows you, if someone board wipes, to rebuild.
Sure.
Because they're just going to start ignoring you and worry about the person who's got the monarch now.
And you can also get those touchy situations with a monarch where somebody looks at you and they're like, okay, I do have this one flyer and he has no flyers, but it's my only blocker. And if I swing at him, I'm definitely getting hit. And is it worth drawing 1 card when the dude who's next to me has an 8/8 guy?
And he's just going to come for the
monarch. He's definitely going to hit me to get the monarch. Is that worth a trade? Maybe it's not. Like leave this chump blocker back. And then you can get a full circle going that way where that person then goes, okay, well, I could swing at the monarch too with my 8/8, but then I've got nothing to stop that dude over there who's going to swing at me. And you just keep it for 3 turns because no one's willing to take that chance.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, if I'm at 40 life and it's going to leave me wide open, I'll take it all day.
Sure.
I'm just like, I'd take it.
I would too. But like you're going to be there's times when you're going to be at 14 or something and someone's like, ooh, I don't want to risk everyone swinging at me to get that monarch now. So that's one I would definitely put in the stack, I think. There's a lot of upside, not a lot of downside to it.
For sure.
So how about things we haven't addressed here we want to talk about? Because I think you guys talked about changing a lot of stuff in the deck.
I thought about changing the entire deck completely to tribal soldiers. A lot of soldiers have first strike.
Yep.
You can still keep it the tribal layer that you're talking about because Kwende is a knight, so you could be like the knight of the soldiers, leading the soldiers. And then it just opens up aspects to you with like valor in your graveyard and archetype of courage and knighthood enchantment, which gives all your creatures first strike. You could play cards like Soul of Theros, which is a beater for 6 mana.
Yeah.
6/6. With a 6 mana ability that gives all your creatures +2/+2 first strike and lifelink until end of turn.
Mm-hmm. And then it's way easier to use those things Max mentioned, like Banner and
Path of Ancestry and Herald's Horn.
Yep. Lets you use those a lot easier too.
Yep.
How about you, Max?
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I would go humans over soldiers just because you can still run a few angels like he already is. This deck, white plays itself to combat tricks, so like stuff like Dictate a Heliod, giving your entire team +2/+2 at instant speed is great.
and it becomes 4/4 in terms of damage you're dealing. They're +2/+2, but they're swinging for an extra 4 damage multiplied by 6 or 8 creatures.
Yep.
To take a Heliod's just going to kill people sometimes.
Secure the Waste is a really fun instant speed card where you create X 1/1 soldiers for X and a white. This can be used. It counts.
Soldiers.
Yeah. So it can be used defensively. So if you need blockers after a board wipe, or it can be used at someone's end step so you have 8 or 9 attackers the next turn. It's just a good, trick up your sleeve.
The other big thing that we talked about with minimal Planeswalkers, I think there needs to be a few more Planeswalkers in here. The mono white Planeswalkers actually make white better, in my opinion.
Yes.
Their abilities are really good because you're playing small creatures, and they actually build your creatures up, do other things like that, or they pump out creatures. That's the other thing, is that they create so many tokens. A lot of them do.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that if you can get a couple of Elspeth emblems, it's really, really good way to win a game.
Humble brag.
No, I'm not saying like overdo it, but I mean, there's like certain select ones. Like if you want to stick to the knight route, Gideon Ally of Zendikar creates 2/2 knights.
Yes.
Yep.
That kind of stuff you could do. I was thinking like a Johnny Vengeant, which gives creature +1/+1 first strike.
And Vigilance, I think?
Vigilance or lifelink or something like that. Well, if you combine that with enchantment that we talked about, then it gives all your creatures
Right,
that.
it spreads all the way across the board.
Yep.
And if you happen to have Odric out too at the same time.
Yeah.
I have one final one, and this is like a protection spell almost, is Comeuppance.
Oh, yeah.
We actually got smoked by that this
Did you
weekend.
in the tournament?
Not even thinking about it against stupid big dinosaur who's like a 12/12 whatever.
Oh, Gishath.
The Naya one or whatever. Yeah. Zitalpa. I think
no.
That's the mono.
Zakama.
Zakama, there we go. Yeah, we're like, oh, we attack for like 40, and the guy's like, comeuppance, and Phil's like reading it, and he's like, oh, so we lose 40. I'm like, no, Phil, they just wiped our board. It's like a Secure the Waste is what just happened.
Yeah. Yeah, so for 3 and a white, it's an instant prevent all damage that will be dealt to you and planeswalkers you control. So if you do add some more, you protect them.
Yep.
From damage that would they take this turn, damage done by creatures is dealt back to those creatures. And then non-creature damage is dealt to the player.
Yep.
Ouch. Yeah, I don't want that when I fling a Crash beater at somebody for 42. That's bad business. A couple ones I have here. There's no real graveyard hate in this deck.
And there's no real recursion either, so...
Yeah, just run a Scavenger Grounds. Everybody, put Scavenger Grounds in your decks.
Dana's just going to walk around with like a
just
small, like,
giving away Scavenger Grounds to kids.
Yep. He'll walk around with like a 250 count box.
I don't play Scavenger Grounds in any of my decks.
Every
single one of my decks plays graveyard
I
cards.
I keep trying to walk around the playgrounds giving kids Scavenger Grounds, and they keep asking me to leave.
This is an odd Pokemon Go story.
Here, take the Scavenger Grounds. We're like, sir, this is a Hardee's. What are you doing? I'm like, take the Scavenger Grounds.
There's still a Hardee's that has a playground around here?
Right. So yeah, I would put something in there, Relic of Progenitus, something, because you're going to get burned by graveyards.
Yeah.
And the reason I like Scavenger Grounds is, particularly in a mono white deck, if you never use it, you're just tapping it for a colorless mana and you don't care. But there's going to be that time when you can see somebody's about to do something, that you kill their commander and they're like, I'm going to put this in the graveyard. Like, oh, okay, well, I'd better save that Scavenger Grounds because something bad's going to happen.
I really like Rest in Peace, though, in white, because it stops everything.
You need to dedicate a slot to it, is why I say Scavenger Grounds. I would probably run both. I would run Scavenger Grounds and Rest in Peace, or at the very least Relic of Progenitus, or something along those lines, Torment's Crypt or something.
Yep.
But I think most of the time, maybe in his meta he doesn't, but like I feel like I need to, where we play, I need to have multiple ways to deal with graveyards, or I'm going to lose games.
That's how it should be. Mm-hmm. The graveyard is a resource.
It's a second hand for a lot of decks.
Dana talks about using his life as a resource all the time. And for everyone who's listening, the graveyard is the same exact thing.
For sure.
Yep.
Just because you're not using it that way and mono white isn't great at it necessarily doesn't mean somebody else isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think this deck just needs more removal. You're in mono white. You have pretty much some of the best. Like there's no Wrath of God, there's no Austere Command, Return to Death, Path to Exile. And Council's Judgment if you know how to vote, unlike myself.
Never not funny.
And my newest favorite is Settle the Wreckage.
Settle is really, really good. Yeah.
Love that card.
You don't need 15 pieces of targeted removal, but you need 5 probably, I think. I like to have 5 at least.
In mono white, I love to play Banishing Light and O-Ring because it hits any problem threat.
And so does Council's Judgment, which is what's great about it. Oblation is in here. Oblation's good. It hits any problem in an emergency. You can also hit your own token and draw 2 cards if you need to. It's got a lot of flex. I like Oblation. And he does have swords. That's really good too. But I think you need a couple more pieces.
The biggest one that I can recommend, aside from Council's Judgment that Max is talking about, is Grasp of Fate, which hits every player that you're playing against. So you can get rid of pesky things, and then you look at the last player who doesn't have anything, just be like, I'm sorry, man, you're collateral damage.
I remember being kind of down in Grasp of Fate because the first couple times I saw it played, the person who cast it went like, I'm going to hit your Consecrated Sphinx, and I'm hitting your Baneslayer, and I'm hitting your, doubling season or whatever it was. Can I hit that can hit non-creature permanents.
Yep.
And then everyone's like, well, I want that Grasp of Fate gun to get my big thing back. After a while, though, everyone kind of figured out, well, you don't do that. You just hit that doubling season and then say, I'm going to hit your Birds of Paradise and your Swiftfoot Boots. Mm-hmm. And the other two people with the Birds and Swiftfoot Boots are like, it's not worth removing it to give that person back that doubling season. So they're just out their thing. Yep. It's like you use it to take out the big thing and then get some collateral damage that's not worth that the other people aren't going to remove because they don't. It's not worth it.
Yeah, and if you are in a pinch, you can hit the three biggest things, and
and buy yourself 30 seconds.
A lot of times, we'll say you're playing with a mono blue player, a mono red player, and a mono green player. Well, if you hit the Consecrated Sphinx, you hit the doubling season, and then you hit the red players, whatever. Let's say it's a Kiki Jiki or something. That red player is going to be like, oh yeah, thank God that's gone because I couldn't deal with those other two. I don't care about my Kiki Jiki being gone,
there's still
even
times,
if that's my combo enabler.
There's still times they might not try to remove it because they know the other things are far worse.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a good one as well. The board wipe situation is I'm a little unsure. Mass Calcify is a card that looks really good on paper, and whenever I've ran it, 7 mana to destroy non-white creatures seems good because you're mono white, and you're like, okay, I'm going to destroy everything but my stuff, and occasionally a few things will get through, but that's not really how it works.
No.
Particularly in a game where so many decks are multicolor. There's been so many times when I ran it in a mono white deck, and I went to cast it and look around, and I'm like, okay, well, it's not going to hit Brago and 2 of Max's 5 creatures because only 2 of them are blue. The other ones are like blue-white, and his commander will live. And I'll look at the next person. I'm like, okay, well, that person's got a Selesnya deck. And even though most of the deck's green, the commander's white-green, and he happens to have a white angel out. And so I'll hit 3 tokens. And then the other person's playing, Boros or something, so I'm not going to hit Aurelia in their deck. There's a shocking amount of times it leaves way too much stuff up for 7 mana. So I think I'd rather just run Austere Command.
I agree.
Yeah.
The other ones that I was thinking about, you have Citywide Bust.
Yep.
Which hits all creatures with toughness 4 or greater.
Yep.
And then you have Dawn to Dusk. I don't remember the exact wording on Dawn, but I do believe it's creatures with power 3 or greater.
3 or greater die. The Dusk brings everything power 2 or less back.
Yep. So if you are playing the weenies, because a lot of your knights are 2/2s or whatever, that's another way to recur them.
It's a wipe, and then you can bring stuff back.
They do go to your hand, though. They don't go back to the battlefield with Dusk.
But
I agree. It
you're in mono
your
white.
hand.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Just getting the recursion back is really, really useful. So definitely Mass Calcify is one I would not run. And you know what? I know Fumigate can at times really change the course of the game when the board state is huge and you drop a Fumigate and you're like, I'm gaining 28 life. But I feel like I still would rather have the flexibility of an Austere Command or maybe even something like Tragic Arrogance, where you can just keep your big, scary things and leave everyone else garbage and then whomp somebody in the face because you kept your Baneslayer Angel and your whatever. I just feel like that's, I don't know. I Fumigate's a great card too, but I don't know if this deck needs the life gain badly enough, and it's not abusing it in a way that like a black-white deck might.
Yep. No, Fumigate's not the okay thing. I just about said something that would have made me sound like a fool.
We would have deleted it like we do whenever I say something that makes me sound like a fool. I was
thinking Fumigate. I'm like, oh, you gain 1 life and you destroy all equipment attached to a creature. I'm like, wait, no, I'm thinking of 2 separate board wipes there.
that would be a great board wipe, though.
So isn't there a white one that does? It
was the one right before Fumigate.
Yeah, was it more than
Hostilities.
And Hostilities.
Yeah, there we go. So protection, I think one of the things, I mentioned this before with the mono-white way to protect your commander, but I think I'm surprised people don't gun for Kwende a lot more. If you're doing a swing and Kwende's giving your guys double strike and someone can remove Kwende midstream with a Hero's Downfall or something and cut the damage you're dealing in half, I feel like that's the thing I'm gunning for pretty often, and there's no Lightning Greaves in this deck. I'd be really tempted to find a slot for Lightning Greaves. I get that it locks it on Warhammers with double strike is going to gain you 12 life sometimes, and it's going to get damaged through, I guess, but I feel like Lightning Greaves, keeping someone from moving your Kwende when you're swinging into them, is probably going to make a difference more often than gaining a little bit of life.
Oh, I agree 100%.
Yep.
So that's one I would look at. We mentioned Eerie Interlude, Unbreakable Formation, that kind of thing. Teferi's Protection is there, but I'd find room for one or two more ways to save your board state, which we mentioned before in the board wipe section. And Max, you said removal. He's running a bunch of knights. There's a knight called Pentarch Paladin. It's 2 and 3 white, and it's a human knight, 3/3. When it enters battlefield, choose a color, and you can spend WW, so 2 white, and tap it to destroy a permanent of the chosen color.
Wow.
I have that one on my list too.
It's not like in this deck though. It fits your theme. It's a knight like you're already running. I'm like, it's a removal spell too. It does doing double duty. I would definitely put that in the place of something because why not? Not a lot of downside to it. If you happen to have Greaves in place of something else, you can use it that turn.
Yep.
And it's permanent. So it won't hit lands, but like you can deal with a troublesome planeswalker, deal with an enchantment, deal with a creature. So that's one I would consider if you're trying to stay really heavily on theme too.
Yeah. I guess the final parting thing I would say about with the board wipes and everything that you're facing against is don't overextend it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big thing. And it's very hard for a deck like this because a lot of your stuff is so low curve that you can play, turn 2 you play something, turn 3 you play 2 things, turn 4 you play 2 things, turn 5 you play 3 things, and then you're out of cards in your hand, someone board wipes, and you're just done.
Yeah.
A way that I've noticed to prevent myself from doing this in a commander is I start tweaking my land base to the point where, okay, all my stuff's like 2 or 3 drops. Well, I tweak it so I get stuck on 3 or 4 lands maximum usually.
Sure.
So it prevents you from going overboard.
Or you could do that thing where you say to yourself privately in your head, I'm not going to cast my commander until turn 6 no matter what. Maybe your commander isn't the right thing to do in this deck, but like you can mentally set roadblocks for yourself. I'm not going to cast my first creature. I'm going to take 15 damage because I have no blockers. And I'm fine with that because I'm not going to actually cast any blockers until turn 6 or something. And I'm just going to cast rocks and keep stuff in my hand and hope somebody board wipes. Like you don't do that every game, but I think it's good to do those kind of mental challenges to get a feel for how the deck responds to those things and then say, that actually worked pretty well. Maybe I want to run 4 more board wipes in this deck or 3 more board wipes to make sure I'm the one with the board wipe and I can cast it on turn 5 really, really frequently and then start playing stuff when I have a full grip and everyone else has just lost 3 creatures.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like maybe you want to try that kind of thing out and get a feel for specific ways your deck can play to play into its advantages.
Yep. Another thing that I've considered doing, and I've never really had the opportunity to do it because a lot of people don't play fast decks like I do, but you just keep pace with the person, the group. Like if they're jamming creature after creature after creature,
then you
keep pace because worst case scenario, someone board wipes, everyone's down.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Yep.
But if no one's doing that, then and you're the person playing creature, you're going to get burned.
Yeah.
Sometimes you won't. Sometimes no one has a board up in hand, and you're just going to play 6 creatures and then go double strike and kill that person. Like, yeah, no response. Cool, now I'm going to kill you, no response. Next turn, kill that person.
If that ever happens, they've never played in our meta.
Well, right.
I swear everyone has a board wipe in their opening hand.
But even then, sometimes I've had those games where I just don't draw an answer and no one does, and that just happens sometimes.
Yep.
But that's pretty infrequent. Pretty infrequently, if you overextend and no one else is doing that, that's going to cost you because someone somewhere is going to draw a board wipe in those first 7 turns.
Yep.
Sandbagging's fun. What are you talking about, Dana?
Speaking from experience, I've sandbagged my way to victory plenty of times, both intentionally and because I've just had a bad opening hand.
I love watching Max when he does it, and he thinks he's so
I'm terrible at it.
He's just like, attack, and you're like, you got a board wipe in hand.
Yep. He still gets me sometimes. He's fooled me before when I'm like, he's got a rift. I know he's got a rift. That's why he's holding back, and I'm counting his mana. I'm like, he's at 7 mana. He's got a rift. I'm not going to do anything this turn. And it comes back around to him, and I'm like, okay, before the end of your turn, say it, Max. Nope, he just draws his card, and I'm like, what? Wait, what just happened?
Pasco.
I was so sure he had a board.
I actually heard that on, I think it was this Tuesday. You were counting one of the players we play with, Blake. You're like, oh, you ain't got Rift mana. And Blake's like, I have Evacuation mana, though.
And I didn't believe him because I knew he didn't run Evacuation in that deck. Maybe if Rift was a banned card, people start running Evacuation again.
Isn't Evacuation banned too, though?
No, Evacuation's legal.
Evacuation returns all creatures to their owner's hands. Or all permanents.
Creatures.
I think it's just all creatures, yeah.
Which one am I thinking of?
There's a blue one. It's not Sunder, which bounces land.
There's
was
a blue in the one. Annihilation.
Yeah.
Upheaval.
There we go. Yep. The one I was kind of looking at in here, too, I was wondering about was True Conviction, which is a great enchantment, but you're already giving double strike pretty frequently. and you have a little bit of life gain as it is.
I think it's a backup plan type of deal because
Maybe.
sometimes if we've all ran into it where people just hate your general off the board.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
like I've had it in Recce where when I'm playing your Recce deck where they know what Recce does. So any chance they get, they kill Recce. Next thing I know, Recce costs 30 mana, and I'm like, oh hey, well here's one of the other draw effects. We'll go this route then.
Yeah. Which is why those are in there, because you need them sometimes.
Yeah, so that's why I'm assuming that's in there is because it's just a backup plan to give the double strike.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. So what do you guys think of Kwende? You going to build a Kwende deck now, Max?
I like it. I like Kwende, but I think I'd build it a little differently.
Okay. How about you, Chris?
I will never build a mono white deck.
Challenge accepted. I got to find a mono white deck to make Chris one of them. I already told you. You can build your Sarah Planeswalker deck with all the different Sarah versions you want to build.
No, you can't.
Mono white's just not good enough.
That would feel bad to lose to that deck.
I'd rather build mono red over that and just lose in style.
Listen, mono white's not good. If you're building mono white, you're doing it for the challenge, or that's why I built that Jareth deck. That's entirely for that reason.
I'd rather build an all colorless deck. I think that would be more of a challenge for me.
I think your commanders are so limited then, and they're mostly kind of good because you have the Titans or Karn or Traxos. I think Traxos would be kind of fun.
I think Karn wouldn't be bad neither because he really doesn't do too much as a general himself.
There's some combo with Karn, but I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, you're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah. Max had considered Traxos for a while.
I did.
So this deck has a pretty lean CMC. Overall, I think the pieces are there. I think it's too many creatures.
Yeah.
I think it's asking to get burned. And I get that. If that's your theme, then you just have to accept that. Because I'll get that too. If someone says, yeah, it's bad running 36 creatures in my deck, but that's what I want to run. All right, well, I get that.
Yeah. Honestly, I would cut it down. I think my math went to 25, 30 maximum for creatures.
Yeah, if you want to stay really creature heavy, I think 30 is probably 30 is a high number. Like I run in a creature heavy deck, 30 is the most I run in any of my decks, which is I think in my Edric deck.
Well, even in my Alesha deck, which is creature heavy, I think I only run maybe a maximum of 20 creatures.
Sure.
But they're so versatile and so utility
and they
heavy.
They come back pretty frequently too. So, all right. Well, thank you very much, Dylan, for sending us your Kwende list. I had not seen a Kwende deck before, so that was exciting, seeing something I hadn't seen before. Thank you for sharing with us, and I'd like to hear back down the road to see what, if any, changes you may have made. We will be back next Monday with a regular show. Until then, I am Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.